Well, guys, you know how I mentioned last week that we're getting to the exciting part and we're getting to the point where we start getting getting to see the winners and losers and start looking them into detail. This week's roundup is exactly the type I'm talking about. You can see that the lights look a little bit different, a little bit bluer, maybe sky bluer is probably the best way of putting it. And we are going to be touching on into that. And we're just going to do it in terms of looking into the results, looking into the tables, see how things affect everything, and then we'll start talking into the stories. So we started off on the Friday, and we had a match between Blackburn Rovers and Coventry City. It was a 1-1 draw, and there were celebrations in Coventry and Countryside from this result. We will talk about it in a little bit. Then we moved on into Friday. Sorry, not Friday, Saturday. There we go. And we had a few matches going on. Leeds United beating Wolverhampton Wanderers 3-0. Brentford drawing 0-0 with Fulham. Newcastle United losing 2-1 to Bournemouth. Tottenham Hotspur 2-2 draw with Brighton. Still not a win for them, but I've got to say they looked better. They actually looked all right. And then Chelsea, a 1-0 loss to Manchester United. Moving on into the Sunday, we had a 4-3 win for Aston Villa over Sunderland. We had a 2-1 win for Liverpool at Everton. We're not going to be doing a big deep dive into Liverpool, so I'm just going to mention this, that when it came to that, I was looking at the match probably through my hands. Everton, I don't mind saying, Everton were the better team, and Liverpool got away with a win, and I have no idea how they did it, but it was impressive stuff. Nottingham Forest beating Burnley 4-1, and Manchester City won that match between them and Arsenal. In terms of the Championship matches that were going on as well, there was a lot of internationals that happened in the women's side. We had Derby County winning against Oxford United. We had Millwall beating QPR. Portsmouth beating Leicester City. That's also quite significant, as we're going to touch on. Norwich City continuing their impressive run by beating Bristol City 4-2. A draw between Hull City and Birmingham City, both of them being impressive this season. West Bromwich Albion getting a 2-0 win over Preston North End. Sheffield Wednesday getting another draw against Charlton Athletic. I don't know what's happened to Sheffield Wednesday. They just seem to like getting draws right now. Southampton beating Swansea. Sheffield United beating Watford, and Wrexham beating Stoke. And then on the Sunday, just to add more spice to the Championship, we had Ipswich Town and Middlesbrough getting a 2-2 draw between themselves. We also had a Monday match, but it wasn't really worth watching. Crystal Palace and West Ham United, 0-0 draw between the two of them, point for West Ham United. But that wasn't the end. Because Tuesday and Wednesday, we also had Premier League and Championship matches. We started off Premier League, Chelsea losing again, 3-0 to Brighton and Hove Albion. And then here we go, Coventry City 5-1 over Portsmouth, Leicester City 2-2 with Hull City, Norwich City 2-1 win over Derby County, Oxford United 1-0 loss to Wrexham, QPR 2-1 loss to Swansea, Southampton and Bristol City a 2-2 draw between themselves. Millwall gets another win against Stoke City this time, and West Bromwich Albion beating Watford 3-0. And then just moving on to Wednesday, because there was even more matches that happened. Bournemouth 2-2 draw with Leeds United, Manchester City getting a 1-0 win over Burnley, Birmingham City getting a 2-1 victory over Preston North End, Ipswich Town beating Charlton, Middlesbrough beating Sheffield Wednesday. The unbeaten streak is over for Sheffield Wednesday. And Blackburn Rovers getting a win over Sheffield United. So in terms of the tables, we need to start talking this big time. Because this is where we're at. We have a switch. We have a change. Manchester City are now at the top of the table. And you're probably looking at this going, well, hold on. They got 70 points. Why is Manchester City above Arsenal? Maybe it's like an alphabetical thing, but then again, Arsenal should be first based on that. Well, it's purely down to the fact that Manchester City have scored 3 more goals over a 33-game season. Now, I mean, this is the thing, right? You could probably say that Arsenal are not like free scoring, but that's like 1 goal every 11 games. That in 11 games, a 1-0 victory turns into a 2-0 victory. It's not exactly huge, is it? But yeah, that is where we're at. We're also at a situation where Manchester United and Aston Villa are just trading punches right now. Liverpool keeping up with them. They seem to all on like some sort of run right now. But Brighton and Hove Albion have just leapfrogged Chelsea. In fact, Bournemouth have just leapfrogged Chelsea. And Chelsea have played 1 game more, so they're in danger of losing ground to Brentford. And Everton. And Sunderland. And Fulham. And actually, Crystal Palace got 2 games in hand. They could be behind Crystal Palace too. Wild. Never thought I'd see the day. We were going to be touching on that. We also had some confirmation that happened at the bottom, because now 5 games to go for Wolverhampton Wanderers, which means that they could get a maximum of 15 more points. 15 plus 17, 32, which means the highest they can finish is 18th if everyone else loses, which means Wolverhampton Wanderers have been relegated. Burnley, exactly the same situation. They've got 4 games, 12 points, again 32 points, so they are now down. We have our first 2 teams that are down in terms of Burnley and Wolverhampton Wanderers. It's depressing when it comes to Wolverhampton Wanderers, but kind of expected for Burnley. They have this like yo-yo side of things, and yeah, we'll probably touch on Wolverhampton Wanderers in a bit, but I think it's kind of been expected. We're still in this situation though when it comes to Tottenham Hotspur, West Ham United, Nottingham Forest, that they're still battling between themselves. And actually, if we're talking about it in terms of maximum amount of points, the 15-point situation, the only ones that are probably mathematically safe right now is up to Everton right now. Sunderland and Fulham still, I mean, it's like 1% chance that they'll go down, but they'll probably just need to get a couple more points, or hope that Tottenham Hotspur and the guys don't keep things up. But it very much looks like it's between West Ham and Tottenham Hotspur, a rivalry technically between the two of them, to see who stays up and who goes down. But we're not going to be focusing too much on the Premier League. We're going to focus a little bit on it when it comes to the title race, but and one other team. But I want to focus on the Championship this week, because of what happened in this table. And like here's the facts, right? That there's still a lot of competition for 2nd place to 6th place. We're still in the situation. There's so it's 46 games, so 2 more games to go for some of them, 3 more games to go for a few others. So in terms of the top 2, and any one of Ipswich, Millwall, Southampton and Middlesbrough still could get 2nd place. And if we're talking in terms of the playoffs, for 2nd to 9th could all be in the playoffs between 3rd and 6th. And then in terms of the bottom, in terms of the relegation situation, we are basically in a situation where it's almost confirmed. Oxford United are 6 points behind Charlton Athletic with a worse goal difference. There are 6 points to play for. So unless Oxford United get like a 2 6-0 drubbings and then Charlton Athletic lose their matches, it looks likely that Oxford United are going down along with Leicester City and Sheffield Wednesday. And this is where we're going to start talking into it a bit more of a deep dive. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason why we're going to be doing a bit of a deep dive into this, because, well, here's the thing. We've spoken a little bit about rivalries through the series, and this one's one that doesn't get talked about a lot, but is fierce. I grew up in the Midlands, right, and worked in a place that had Coventry City fans, Leicester City fans, and Aston Villa fans. There is this triangle, this triad of rivalry. Coventry City don't like Aston Villa, Coventry City don't like Leicester City, Aston Villa don't like Leicester City and Coventry City, and Leicester City don't like Aston Villa and Coventry City. It's like this. I think it's just down to where they all are, that they're, the biggest for their little areas. Sorry, Birmingham City. And so there just ends up being this triad of dislike. And here's the funny thing. 10 years ago, this was the other way round, what we're about to talk about. What we're about to talk about right now, it is the very opposites. Like, if you'd have said, everything I'm about to say for the next 5 minutes, if you'd have changed two of these teams' names around and flipped them around, it would have meant exactly the same information. So let's start off with a positive. Let's start off with the Coventry City winning the championship. Not just getting promoted, winning the championship. That's why they were in celebratory mood, by the way, on Friday. That's why we had the lights of blue, was the fact that they were getting promoted on Friday, and then that victory against Portsmouth basically confirmed that they are winning the championship. Incredible. And this is the very rags to riches story that we love. Now, on Coventry City's badge, you can maybe just about see it when looking at the badge. On the right-hand side is a phoenix rising from the ashes. Perfect mythical creatures to talk about here, because if we're talking about a team that has been in the ashes and has found it against all odds to rise to the very top again, it is Coventry City. And Coventry City, up until 2000, the year 2000, from the 60s, were those quintessential Premier League teams, the ones that just stayed there. Almost like feels rude to say Everton, but modern day Everton, that sort of thing, the maybe probably a fairer judgment might be like a Fulham, right? That they're just in the Premier League, right? And they were impressive in the Premier League. Incredible players of the past to think about. Dion Dublin's a really good example of that. And they were really competitive. So competitive, in fact, that they beat Tottenham Hotspur in an FA Cup final. These guys have won the FA Cup in the 80s, right? And there was a lot of ambition. Huge amount of ambition. The owners thought, let's go for it. Let's build a stadium. They had an old school stadium, similar to what you see in Stoke nowadays. But they wanted to go big. They wanted something quite impressive. I mean, by today's standards, it's just a stadium. But back then, it was like, this should be given out to Chelsea before it's given out to Coventry City. But Coventry City wanted to build that stadium. That impressive, huge stadium. And they did. Unfortunately, they completed it at the time that Coventry City got relegated. So this big, expensive stadium that they've spent millions building, and now they haven't got the millions coming in from the Premier League to finance it. So they're in financial difficulties. They had to sell their stadium. In fact, I don't even know if they sold it. I think they had to give it away because and so it belonged to the council. It meant they rented it, and guess what happens when you have a landlord? Yeah, you know what happened. The rent of the stadium went up and up and up, which meant the financial situation for Coventry City was getting lower and lower and lower. They went into administration, meaning that they had no money left. They were plunged into the depths. Oh, and by the way, whilst all this was happening, there was another team that wanted this stadium, the London Wasps. renamed to the Wasps so that they could go to Coventry, because I'm just going to tell you, for any of you guys that aren't in the UK, Coventry is quite a distance away from London. Like, we're not talking other side of Texas differences, but for the UK, huge. There's probably about 30 professional clubs in between Coventry City and London. Yeah. And so, guess what? They lost their stadium. They had to go to Northampton, which isn't quite London, but it is 30 miles away, and once again, really poor straights. Imagine, right? Your city that you're proud of. Let's say you live in the US, right? And I'm trying to use my knowledge here of US states here, and it's not great, right? But let's say that you support a team in California, and then they ask you to travel to Ohio for your home matches. You could be a bit frustrated with that. In fact, you'd be bloody fuming. And that's what Coventry City fans were like, fuming. And they didn't even go to the games. There's a banner that you'll find around that is basically at the Northampton ground, basically saying if you're a true Sky Blue is being the nickname of Coventry City. If you're a true Sky Blue, do not go into the ground. It was toxic. It was empty. It was horrific. Do you remember where the fans were? They were on a hill just outside the stadium, so they could just about watch the game. They could just about celebrate, but the team weren't hearing it because nowhere near them. And whilst all this was happening, the new owners, Sisu, goodness me, the amount of times I heard Sisu out at work was crazy. But the amount of rubbish that the owners put them through, selling further, they went down to the 3rd tier. They went down to the 4th tier, in fact. It was looking in dire straits. And then came along Mark Robins. Mark Robins is Coventry City folklore, by the way. Mark Robins, manager, he's currently managing Stoke City, right? Spent a bit of time managing Coventry City, I think, while they were in the Championship or around start of League One stages. And he left to give it another go, and he came back at the time when they were at their lowest. Got them to win a small trophy, the EFL trophy, which is a competition between the 3rd tier and the 4th tier leagues, like a little FA Cup and mini little League Cup. They won that. Whilst being one of the worst 3rd tier teams, they still won this tournament. Impressive. But they still got relegated down to the 4th tier, and they started doing the bounce back. They won a playoff. They then, in the COVID years, won the 3rd tier title, which means no one celebrated it. And then they surprised everybody in the 2nd tier. I think, was it like the 1st or 2nd time in the Championship? And they were in the playoffs. They were in that 3rd to 6th competition. They made it to the final, losing out to Luton Town. But still, they made it to the final. No one expected that. And then the following year, again, made it to the playoffs. Didn't do as well. But they also made it to the FA Cup semi-final. In fact, some people would say they were robbed of winning that against Manchester United. Then the following season, they made playoffs again. But it was looking like it was this Coventry City's limit. And by the way, fans probably would have been satisfied with that. We're winning. We're giving ourselves hope. There's a little bit of disappointment at the end, but we'll be all right. And then this happens. Frank Lampard super frank. Just gets them winning, and they win the title. Now, this is important, guys. This is really important to talk about here, because if you are watching Premier League matches and everything like that, and you do get the chance to watch a Coventry City game next year, there is an important song to listen to. And I think this is a song that is getting to be as iconic as the big ones, You'll Never Walk Alone, everything like that. I might be biased a little bit. But the Coventry City anthem is a song by one of their own bands. And I've forgotten what their band is called, but the song is called We'll Live and Die in These Towns. And actually, when you think about this, Rising from the Ashes, it's a brilliant song. So if you do watch Premier League matches next season with Coventry City, have a listen to that song first and then listen to the crowd sing it. It is incredible. But I mentioned about this situation, right? Of that 10 years ago, this could have been very different. 10 years ago, we were talking about Leicester City in this fairy tale way. From nowhere, winning something no one ever expected they'd win. Winning the Premier League at the odds of 5,000 to 1. And Coventry City were in this drop. Well, guess what? Now Leicester City are in this drop. And it's a really dangerous drop as well, right? Because they've been relegated to the third tier with financial problems. They've basically gambled and lost. Gone all in. They sold their TV rights for a year, basically, to try and keep themselves afloat. And the whole idea of it was that they would be able to pay back those TV rights next year, because they were going to at least be in the Championship, surely. Well, they're going to get less money now. So they're in a bit of a credit card situation, a loan shark situation of their own doing. It's bad. Really bad. Scary, in fact. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Leicester City gets sold to another owner. I don't know who would go for them, but... And the reason why this is so sad is a tragedy that started the whole thing off. So Leicester City are owned by a family from Thailand. I'm not going to try their names. I'll sabotage it straight away. I'll screw it up straight away. But the owner of Leicester City was so impressive, because it wasn't just about the club. It was about building up the entire city and getting them all going for it. And he was loved. He was adored. I'm pretty sure that there was like a celebration of the family, and some of the team players went there, and there was, fun to be had everywhere. And then after a Premier League match, the owner left in his usual fashion. It was it was a goofy thing, let's say. A funny thing, let's say, It was a novel thing for Leicester City that after the players had left the pitch and after the fans had left the stadium, and whilst the TV studios were sort of shutting down, ready to, pack up and go to the next game, a helicopter would come in, land on the centre circle to pick up the owner. It was fun. And then, as was so often the time, and I think this was around the time of Kobe Bryant as well, as it took off, a bird hit the rotors, causing it to crash just outside the stadium. And the owner died. And his son took over. And this is the thing. right? And this is why it's such a tragedy, because of course the son would have been as much loved as the dad was. Of course he would. But skills aren't necessarily transferred in the genes. Does that make sense? Right? There are skills that I have that my dad doesn't. There are skills that my dad has that I don't. There are, yes, there's personality traits, but skills are another matter, and management skills, all that sort of thing. And as loved as the son was, he probably couldn't manage as well as his dad did. And they still had some good times. They still got an FA Cup win. They still got Champions League, Europa League qualification and Europa Conference League qualification. They were still decent, but it felt like the bubble was going to burst, and I'm scared for Leicester City right now. Really scared for Leicester City, because very much like Coventry City, where it was like, we don't know where this is going to go next. I have no idea where this is going to go next for Leicester City either. It's worrying. So, as a football fan, I hope this isn't the end for Leicester City, but I very much am worried that it is. And the reason why I say I'm worried for it is, for fans, it's a way of life. It's ritual. It's like a go to the match on Saturday, go to church on Sunday sort of vibe, right? That's how much it's part of routine. And fans might not have that for much longer. We never know. I don't know where they go from here. I really hope that they find a solution, but I'm almost mourning their loss, similar to Bury FC. That's just truly how I feel about it. Anyways, we've still got Premier League stuff we need to talk about. We've still got one more thing we need to talk about after the Premier League stuff. So let's jump on straight on into it, because blue is definitely the colour today, because we're going from one blue team to another blue team in Manchester City, even though they're showing us green here. Manchester City now at the top of the tree, top of the table. They're just inevitable, aren't they? They are just inevitable. And you know, I was talking last week about the Premier League is stronger than ever. I find it hard to call Arsenal bottle jobs because of the way Manchester City are. I'll still laugh at Arsenal, by the way. I laugh at, very much as, by the way, this sounds really hypocritical, because I didn't understand why people used to laugh at Liverpool bottling the league up until 2019-20, and now I get it. It is funny, right? I prefer Arsenal in the league, but it's also kind of funny to see them slip. But I don't feel it's a bottle if Arsenal weren't to win the league, because of just the way that Manchester City are. They have this switch that happens mid-March, it feels like, right? Where they go, do you know what? Screw it. It's just winning every match now. Think about last season. They were terrible last season. Awful. There was comments that they might not even make Champions League qualification. And then, in March, they just went on a run. Finished third out of nowhere. That is the effect. Because this is the thing, right? Manchester United, during those years that they won, they were getting like sort of 80 odd points, and there wasn't really any impressive streaks that anyone was really doing. But now, I don't know what it is. And does Pep Guardiola tell them to relax? I don't know. I really don't know. And so Yeah, I find it hard to have a go at Arsenal because of just how much of a juggernaut Manchester City is, whether they're weak or not. Um, but I'll say this. Yes, it is hugely disappointing to go from a 10-point lead to a 0-point lead. Of course it is. And I'm sure questions will be asked of Arteta. But I feel like the question should be asked of Pep Guardiola. How is he doing this? I'm not going to put him, by the way, in, is he better than Alex Ferguson or anything like that? I just want to marvel at just how good this guy is. It's incredible. It is genuinely incredible. So, yeah, just a little piece on that. And I only wanted to do a little piece on that because we got Chelsea. Chelsea have sacked Rossini. 5-game losing streak. Didn't score a goal in that losing streak either. It was bad. And it's another prediction I've got wrong. I thought Rossini would be decent. And he has surprised me with how bad he is. Because this isn't the Liam Rossini at Hull City. Liam Rossini at Hull City was measured. He was smart. He was, he knew how to speak. But that wasn't the Liam Rossini we saw at Chelsea. And there's teammates that have said that he's changed and everything like that. And I wonder, I don't know the reason why, but I wonder whether it's a case of he felt like he needed to try too hard. He felt like he needed to show himself to be a Chelsea manager. Do you know what I mean? Like that sort of thing of feeling like you've got to prove yourself, so you do stupid things to try and prove yourself. I remember being in this situation, just working in general, and then there was just a point where it just clicked and went, do you know what? They've hired me for being myself. I'm just going to be myself. I don't even care. I'm not going to try to be this philosophical genius. I'm just going to be a manager. I'm just going to be this. I'm just going to be that. I think that's the thing that Liam Rossini needs to learn the most. Because he just needed to talk straight. Talk facts. None of this respectable nonsense or, aging men. What the hell was even that? Just be yourself. If here's the thing, right? Liam Rossini might have been on a bad run, but if he hadn't said any outlandish comments, people might have looked at him and gone, okay, he tried and failed at Chelsea, but so did Frank Lampard, and Frank Lampard did okay at Everton, so we could give him a shot at like a Sunderland if Regis Libri was to leave. But those comments have just kind of ruined the reputation further. Because it's like, a lot of people are looking at him going, he doesn't even know what he's talking about. So, a bit of a concerning time for Liam Rossini. I feel like he will probably do a Roy Hodgson style thing. Maybe go to like a Swiss league or something like that. Something similar to what Graham Potter did to build his career. Something like that. Because I think he's going to struggle in England again for a while. Yeah. Might take a podcast thing where he just basically talks about his experiences. But I want to talk about Chelsea now because where are we? 5 years into the ownership change since Roman Abramovich left, or was kicked out because he couldn't, as a Russian, be in the UK anymore. And it's a similar mindset to Rossini. trying too hard to be different and clever and smart and everything like that. The 7-year contracts, no, we're not going to buy star players. We're going to predict the star players. We're going to buy the 23-year-olds that are going to be the star players and the 21-year-olds, which we know are going to be star players. The Enzo Fernandez, the Caicedos, all that sort of thing. And again, it's not worked. And I find it staggering that we're in this situation where we, as fans, are almost resigned to the fact of going that the sensible option is probably not going to be the option that Chelsea go for. That it feels like Chelsea are going to focus more on who they think is going to be an amazing manager rather than getting a good manager in the same way they treat their players. And it's like, it's another gamble. Similar to Leicester City, in terms of gambling that 70 million. Chelsea are gambling millions of pounds on a shot in the dark. And I don't think they can stop. This is a 4-year habit. How the hell are they going to kick that? Pun intended. This is dangerous times for Chelsea. Like, again, this could go one or two ways. They might stumble on some gold dust, like an Esteval, and do like 11 Estevals and win the title in 5 years, but they've got just as much of a chance of getting relegated in 5 years because of this gamble. I'd hate to be a Chelsea fan right now. Really hate to be a Chelsea fan right now. And by the way, my grandmother is a Chelsea fan, so yeah. Anyway, let's get away from domestic stuff because we are now getting closer to the World Cup. And the World Cup is an amazing tournament. An amazing, incredible tournament. So good. It's a place where you get to see all the cultures. Get to see the rowdiness of the European fans. The carnival atmosphere of the South American fans. The sort of tribal feel of the African fans. The uber patriotic feel of the American fans. And then, the so polite, so amazing nature of the fans in the Asian countries. It's an amazing feeling for a few weeks having that delusion that everyone's united and everyone's having fun and there are no problems and it's all great. And here's the thing. This is going to be the craziest comment I'm going to say, but it is true. In the past 3 World Cups, including this one, we have had a World Cup held in Russia in 2018, a World Cup held in Qatar in 2022, and this year we're having a World Cup held in the USA. And I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that the one being held in the USA is the most controversial. I never thought I would say that a few years ago. This is wild. And there is so much going on that it's got to the point where I'm going, I don't even know if I want to watch this anymore. I don't even know if I want to watch this World Cup. Like, great for the players if they feel welcome, but the atmosphere is going. There are fans of countries that can't go because they don't feel welcome in the USA. For example, Iran, as I'm talking, see here. Then you remove the African fans a bit because guess what? Tickets are ridiculously expensive. Thousands of pounds for like the first round. travel hundreds of pounds for a bus or a shuttle for each ticket. This has become the most commercialised World Cup I've ever seen. It's like the thing of, let's see how much money we can get out of this. Not let's see how cool of an image this can be. Right? Like what happened in Brazil, where they were showing off the sites and showing off, the fans. Like, it's like, it feels like this is just gonna be a political stage. Like, you just know who's gonna be making speeches, making comments, making social media posts, probably after every day, talking about each country, how much they do or do not like them. I don't know. It just feels awful. I wish it was simpler, guys. Do you know what? I wish it was. I wish. Take me back to 2010. Take me back to 2010 in the World Cup in South Africa, when the worst things that we were thinking about was the bloody vuvuzelas and how terrible England were again. Like, I would love it for the most controversial moment to be a decision that should have been overturned by VAR or goal line technology. But that's not going to be the most controversial incident of this. We've barely scratched the surface, and we're already into political situations and commercialised situations, and it's like, it's disgusting. And you know the problem? Because of the fact that companies have got at least some of the seats, they're still going to be fans of the World Cup. Like, I can almost guarantee, right? I know this because in the UK, ITV, one of the broadcasters that does international tournaments, would do competitions, and they've probably given out tickets to people, along with loads of spending money, to go. So there's going to be fans. We've got no choice. But this, again, I don't know if I want to watch it. But yeah. Anyway, we've got another full weekend of action going on ahead of us. In fact, we've got some crazy stuff because, as well as the Premier League, we also have FA Cup matches going on, the semi-finals, Manchester City and Southampton, Chelsea and Leeds United. There is a lot going on over the weekend. We've got another overview that we're going to be doing next week. I'd love to know your thoughts, by the way. What are your thoughts on Coventry City going up? What are your thoughts on Leicester City going down? The title race, how do you feel about that? How do you feel if Arsenal was to lose out on the title? And what's your thoughts on Chelsea? What's your thoughts on the World Cup? There's a lot to pull apart here. There's a lot of comments I'm sure you guys might have. Feel free to pop them down below. And as always, feel free to like, subscribe, and take care.